Hello, today is Saturday, January 9th, 2021. I'm Jeremiah Ellis, recording on behalf of the African American Interpretive Center of Minnesota, recording over the phone. Mr. Butler, thank you for sharing your story with us.
No problem, man. This is an honor.
Will you please state and spell your name for the record?
Raphael Butler, Raphael Butler.
Thank you. And when and where were you born?
I was born on January 4th, 1984, Chicago, Illinois, at the Inglewood Hospital.
And tell us a little bit about your parents.
Well, my mom, Stephanie Butler, she had me big young. She was pregnant with me when she was 15 in Chicago. My dad and my mom both was born in Chicago. My dad wasn't in my life for very long. Me, my mom, and my little sister, who's 3 years younger than me, we all moved to Minneapolis from Chicago in 1990. And we spent the majority of my childhood there.
What can you tell us about your grandparents?
My grandmother, Pat Butler, she was also born in Chicago. She just recently passed away a couple of years ago. My grandfather wasn't part of my life.
Okay. How did you get from Minneapolis to Rochester?
Well, me, my mom, and my sister moved here from Rochester because my grandma actually moved down here to Rochester a few years prior to us moving down here, and she liked it down here. So it was a better environment for me and my sister to grow up in. Because if you remember, in the 90s, Minneapolis was not the best place to be in. A lot of unsavory things going on in Minneapolis around that time. So we moved from Chicago, which was a bad place, to Minneapolis, who was a bad place. So we just tried to find a place to where that it was decent to raise children in. And my grandma moved here to Rochester. Me and my sister came down here to visit her one summer. We both enjoyed it. We made friends down here. And so my mom made that decision to just move down here and just make it a permanent thing.
And how would you characterize the neighborhood that you lived in?
The first neighborhood we lived in, it was kind of a mixed neighborhood. One of the poorer neighborhoods in Rochester, if there's such a thing here in Rochester, poor neighborhood. You know, we just kind of hung around kids that, me and my sister, we kind of just hung around kids that we kind of connected with because they were kind of on the same level as we were, black kids, poor white kids and stuff like that. But, yeah, I mean, it was really not much different than the neighborhood in Minneapolis as far as when we first came down here.
And who helped you get settled in the area?
Like I said, my grandma, she had moved down here. She did her research now in Rochester. We also have some friends. My best friend to this day, his mother, Pam, kind of helped us settle in. My grandma, she had a bunch of friends down here. We had a whole bunch of people who kind of had prior experience in Rochester and moved down here to kind of help us settle into the area. And just people that we kind of linked with and just asked questions and stuff like that. Just kind of because again, Rochester is a big culture shock from Minneapolis to Rochester. Especially back then, we moved from Minneapolis to Rochester in 2000, I believe. Right at the end of '99, 2000. So it was still kind of, I don't know, for the lack of a better term, more white than usual. But that wasn't really a issue other than the fact that it was just a big culture shock to me because people were so different than what I was used to in Minneapolis.
Tell me a little bit more about that culture shock. How How did it impact you?
Well, like the main culture shock is that there was, as far as the kids go, like kids my age or a little bit older, a little bit younger, there was more open racism at that time. You know, a big thing back then, back in the day, was cruising Broadway. Driving your car up and down Broadway, and get a lot of N words with the hard R. Uh, uh, while walking down the street, but it was mainly just kids being kids, trying to be tough around their friends, and again, at that time it wasn't as many black people, black families in the town, so they kind of felt, so the kids either way felt like they can be tough and stuff like that, but they failed to realize that you can get away with that with some people, but not everybody. And me and some buddies kind of clashed heads a bunch with those type of kids, and eventually kind of shut them down.
And so it sounds like you were in school, like you were in high school at the time. What was that like for you in this system?
High school was different. Again, there was a culture shock. Mainly just, for instance, like in the cities, going to school, you hardly see any kids at the time go to school in their pajamas, messed up hair and stuff like that. You go to school, you dress to impress. But up here, you got kids pretty much just rolling out of bed, going straight to school. And it was a shock to me at first. It was like, people just don't care about their appearance. And outside of that, like, teachers were a little different here, but not. Yeah, I get teachers were a little different here, and I'm not sure, and I don't want to come out and say that because I was a black kid, but the teachers here didn't seem as interested in kind of enforcing their education on kids. Because I'm not going to sit here and like I was a great kid. I was by all means a terrible student. But I was a terrible student because I felt like the teachers didn't care if I was there or not anyway. I was always a kid that if you're just going to pretend to teach me to get a paycheck, then I'm not going to pay attention in your class. I have always been raised that you don't just get respect, you earn respect. And I don't feel like any of the teachers, when I first came here, wanted to earn the respect of the students. There was some here and there, there's a couple that I can think of, Coach Barnett, who really wanted my respect and tried to earn it. But for the most part, the teachers here just didn't care really less about if I was in school or not, and I didn't care if they cared.
And I know you have a daughter.
Yeah.
And how would you say her experience is now in the school systems?
My daughter's, her experience is completely different from mine, but she also goes to a private school, so that may be a difference. But she loves the kids she goes to school with. She loves all her teachers. They all love her. When we go to school, well, when we used to go to school events, they all sing her praises. So, it's completely different from when I was in school. But again, my daughter loves being in school. She loves her teacher. She likes to be there. And me, I wasn't so much that person.
And so what ways have you engaged with Rochester area businesses or churches or community groups?
Well, growing up, I wasn't really in too much in any of it. The only place I found solace was in the boxing gym, where I kind of started making my name in this town was through boxing, and that has definitely carried over to my adult life. But as far as like my current status with community stuff, I do a boxing class at 125 Live here in Rochester. And I'm trying to expand, right now. I'm trying to get extension to learning more self-defense and, you know, training and stuff like that, because that's one thing that I think is important for everybody to learn is some type of martial art, whether it's boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu. Like, I think it's very important, and it will solve a lot of problems through combat sports because I feel like a lot of people act out of fear. And I know in my life, me being a fighter has helped me with my fear of the other, because I don't, you know, I'm not afraid to interact with people because I feel like I can handle myself the thing with sideways. And I think that if more people dove into that, then they would see my point of view. Wouldn't be so afraid to interact with people who don't look like them, don't come from the same communities as them and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I'm focused on right now, trying to build up the community through through fighting, which sounds crazy, but I have a, you know, it's kind of been my focus for the last few years, is just trying to build that. Obviously, COVID hindered a lot of that, but hopefully once this thing settles down a little bit, we can get it going again.
And how did you come upon boxing as one of your activities to do?
I actually had a friend here in town who used to go down to the boxing gym, and just out of boredom, just trying to find something to do to kind of keep myself out of trouble, because again, as a kid in a town like this, if you don't find something to keep your hands busy, then you, I mean, if this is a town back then, especially, that if you don't have something going on, trouble's going to find you. And I was tired of working my way out of getting in trouble, so I just wanted something to pull my focus. Like I said, school at the time wasn't the thing for me. So my buddy brought me down at the boxing gym, and I instantly fell in love with it. You know, I was more of an angry kid, and when I went down to the boxing gym, it gave me an outlet to release that anger without getting in trouble. And that's one of the main reasons why I fell in love with it, because I can beat on something and not get in trouble for it. And it's always good. Another thing is to not always be the hammer, but be the nail sometimes. And in boxing, you're always going to find somebody that's better than you. They're going to, can I beat you up a bit? And I needed that. I needed somebody to beat me up, because I was always a big kid. Even when I moved to Rochester here, I was 6'2", 190 pounds. I was bigger than most of the adults. So I had that big head, like, you know, nobody's going to mess with me until I got into boxing and realized that there are tough people out there with me, so I need to prepare myself.
Nice. How have you socialized with your neighbors?
Well, for me, like my immediate neighbors, like the people that live around, I'm the type of person, like, I really don't interact much with them. I feel like I'm more of an introvert, so when I'm at home, I like to be by myself, alone, and stuff like that. I don't like people knocking on my door and stuff like that. But I have become friends with my next door neighbor, because she also has a daughter around my daughter's age, so they play a lot. But as far as like my immediate neighbors, I don't interact with them much. We say hi and bye, stuff like that. You know, we're cordial with each other, but I'm not the type of person to go over and with fruit baskets and stuff like that to go to somebody's house. As far as my neighbor, as far as the community goes, I'm always been the person that people can talk to. I've always been the person that people feel comfortable around, and just with my stature, people wouldn't think that, but I mean, I hate pumping my own horn, but people tend to feel very comfortable around me, and that's something that I would like to like that's one of my staples for myself. Like I've always made myself easy to talk to since I became an adult anyway. I like to be that person that people can have uncomfortable conversations with without any judgment and whatnot. So that's something that I've always been for people, not only for black folk but for white folks around here too.
That sounds great. What has come of those conversations, or what have you take away from some of those experiences?
A lot of conversations, like it's just getting people to understand from a different perspective. A lot of people that come out of homes, for instance, that's just an example that I'm thinking of. A lot of people that come out of homes where there was very little interaction with people of a different color. They're just ignorant to what other cultures are. It's not that they necessarily hate somebody, they just don't know. And especially with my work, I work construction with a lot of older guys, and you find that when you have the comfortability to just sit down and talk to these guys, you'll know that, you know, even with some of these small town guys, they just don't know. And once they meet somebody like me who comes from where I come from, and they walk away saying, "Hey, we actually aren't that different. We agree with more than what we disagree with," and those conversations help shape me to the person I am today. Because if I hadn't had those conversations, then I wouldn't be so open-minded to people. And that's one thing that I try to build with my friends. And try to tell them to tell their friends. It's something that I've been instilling into my daughter since she was born. Just have conversations with people. You know, you know, just because you may be a little different on the outside doesn't mean that you have to disagree with everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How have you interacted with Rochester area public officials like city council or law enforcement or Parks and Recreation?
Again, I haven't done much of that lately, but you know, when I was reading the question, I was thinking to myself, you know, I probably should put myself out there more, because I used to have really good relationships with a lot of the police officers on the force. Well, I mean, now that a lot of them have retired, I still have a good relationship with a couple of them that from, you know, back when I was a kid that still know me by name. But outside of that, I really don't have a lot of interactions with public officials, and I should. And this interview has actually made me realize some of the things that I need to start doing around town versus things that I have to do. Because again, like I said, I'm an introvert, so me being at home is great for me. But I know that, especially with the influence that I have in this town, that I could have in this town, I feel like I should put myself out there more. And that's something that I'm going to start doing more in 2021 for sure.
What's happening in the Rochester area that you would like to have an influence on?
Just kind of what I was saying before, just kind of getting people together and, you know, just get people to have more dialogues with each other. I think that just simple conversations could help change the community. Just because I've seen how much in my life it has changed my personality, just having conversations with people that I normally wouldn't have conversations with. And I feel like that would do a great deal for not only the city of Rochester, but for every community, to just have conversations with people, you know, go out to eat with people that you wouldn't usually go out to eat with and stuff like that. I think if we focus more on just becoming a community of people who interact with each other, I think that would greatly benefit the city the city as a whole.
You've, I think, started to kind of allude to this, but how do you think the city and the area has changed in your years that you've been there?
Well, like I was saying before, The biggest change that I've seen in the city since I've lived here is that the racism isn't as open as it used to be. You know, you really don't see as much of it anymore on the face of it. I mean, obviously, I talk to people; they still have these stories that they tell me about, workplace racism and stuff like that, or just random people saying racist stuff to them and stuff like that. But openly, it has greatly diminished, which I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm one of the few people that I know that is okay with open racism, because then you know who needs the help, you know who needs to be talked to, you know who, or when people are too far gone, you can tell who needs to be avoided.
That makes sense. What can you tell me about what Black life is like in Rochester?
Well, one thing that I'm not blind that I'm not blind to is that my experience as a Black man here in Rochester is going to be different than other Black folks here in Rochester, just because of who I am, what I've done in the city, and what people know me as. I'm a 6'3", 6'4", 280-pound athlete who has fought on TV and have all these awards and fighting. So I'm not going to have the same experience as some random Black guy coming down here and living. But I will say, as far as my experience goes, I have never been, in my adult life, I've never been shied away from anything. I've never not been offered opportunities. I've never been blocking getting opportunities and stuff like that. But like I said, I've heard stories from my other peers here, my other Black peers here in town, that stories that greatly differ from mine, and I would like to be able to help them in some way, but again, I would say that my experience has been different than other stories that I've heard, and it saddens me. But overall speaking, like the people that I talk to on a continuous basis, they are, with the few roadblocks they have been put in their way, Rochester, generally speaking, is a very good place for people of all colors. Again, there's going to be some people, some small amount of people that want to stop you because of your skin color or because of where you come from. But generally speaking, Rochester has been a very prosperous city for people who come here.
From Rochester, how have you connected to Black culture or celebrated Black heritage?
See, that's that's another thing that I want to work on more, because as I was thinking about it, like me personally, like I do a lot of stuff, but as far as the city goes, there's minimal. We do the whole generic Martin Luther King Day and stuff like that, but there's nothing specific to Black culture here. And again, when I read that question, I was like, that's another thing that I should probably push towards, because again, I mean, just like I was saying before, like a lot of the ignorance comes from just not knowing the culture and having more things geared towards understanding Black culture. I think again would help the community as far as that area goes. And so again, that's something that I need to push more towards. Obviously, like I said, I've had conversations with multiple people here in town who want to understand generally black culture, and I have, and I've talked to people about that. My daughter definitely knows about black culture. Her being, half white, she also, I feel like it's very important for her to know that part of her because, just let's keep it real. That part of her has been trying to be erased, and I'm not going to let it happen in my immediate area. So yeah, I definitely need to figure out ways to, put more black culture into the city of Rochester because it definitely needs to be had.
So you mentioned that your grandmother has lived in Rochester, your mother has lived in Rochester, you and your daughter. So that's 4 generations in Rochester in your family.
Yep.
How has that experience changed, do you think?
From my experience to my daughter's experience now is night and day. I mean, given the fact, again, I'm not blind to the fact that she's only 11 years old. She hasn't really experienced a whole lot of stuff yet, but I mean, I feel like from when I was, 15 first moving here to where she is now 11 living here, I feel like people have been more accepting and have start listening to the stories of black folk, start understanding stories of black folk, and people are, I could say starting to make black folk feel like they're starting to make black folk here in town not seem like black folk, but just family. And I hope that continues here. Again, obviously you got those small pockets of people who don't want things to change here. But generally speaking, Rochester in a whole has definitely changed towards the right direction just from me to my daughter's age.
And where would you like to see it go for the next generation?
For the next generation, I would love to see it, these problems that people do have, these stories that I do hear from other people, I would love to see those things not existent. Those people that say that their landlord kicked them out because, they had, one too many people living at their houses, even though people wasn't actually living at their houses. Or, I'm sorry, I can't really think of any specific stories right now, but I would love for the next generation, my grandkids live in an era where none of these stories that are heard exist anymore. Obviously, that's wishful thinking, but it's not impossible. And again, I'm going to keep saying this again, and I think the way that diminishes is by people talking, people understanding each other. I'm a real big advocate in that, and I hold it, and I wholeheartedly believe that. And maybe that's just from my experiences, but that's the only thing that I have.
Yeah. You mentioned your profile in who you are, and kind of your experience is different than maybe some other people.
Well, no, I mean, my thing is, I've always been a big guy. I've always been an athlete, and I mean, let's just keep it real. Even the people that don't like you because of skin color would deal with you because you represent the talent they live in. So again, like I've never been blind to the fact that even the people that may or may not give me a job still cheer for me in that box ring because I'm from Rochester. I mean, obviously with the way I am, I'm hopeful that people haven't thought like that, but I'm not dumb to the fact that people definitely could think like that.
How does that feel?
Well, on the face of it, it feels kind of, crappy that somebody that wouldn't give me a job want me to go in there and beat on somebody. But if that person cheering for me pushes them to want to know more about me and who I am, and maybe off that learn about, some of my friends or some of where, my friends people come from, or even bridge the gap, from somebody that they may work with. That I'm okay with. If me fighting or me, doing things like I'm doing now with helping the community and stuff like that, through fighting bridges that gap, then I'm all right with that. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Nice. How has living in Rochester impacted your ability to access employment opportunities?
So like I said before, I can't think of a time in Rochester where I didn't have a job when I wanted one. But again, that's, I attribute that to who I am and, my staff and stuff like that. Me personally, I've never been without a job if I was looking for one now. My job choices may have not been always the best, but I can't think of a time since I've moved to Rochester where I either couldn't find a job or wasn't offered a job. Just like the job that I have now, and as a matter of fact, both the jobs that I have now, my job in construction and doing my boxing classes at 125 Live here in Rochester, both of those jobs were offered to me. So again, I'm not blind to the fact that that has something to do with my stature, but I'm just speaking for me personally. I've never been without a job that I haven't since I moved to Rochester. Even when I was a kid here, my first job, I used to work at Hardee's on Broadway here when it was a Hardee's on Broadway. I went in, I got the job the same day. And that was I was a 16-year-old kid then. So for me personally, I can't speak of any hard times of not working in Rochester. But again, I've heard the stories. And from the people who told me stories, I have no reason not to believe these stories of people not being able to get jobs there was one story that I specifically can think about right now where somebody had went in for a job at Mayo Clinic, as a matter of fact, and they didn't get the job because they said that somebody that they knew that they had an altercation with gave them a bad reference. It is not even having, and that person didn't have anything to do with the job that was at hand. It's just the person who was hiring knew the person who got to the conversation, and because that person said that that's not the person that you want to hear, even though the person, again, this is just what I heard, even though the person was the one who started the altercation, made it seem like the person that was telling me the story was the bad person. Now, maybe it was race related, I don't know, but stories like that happen all the time here in Rochester. Especially with the Mayo Clinic, because it's kind of like a family there, so. But I don't want to talk too badly about the Mayo Clinic because they run this town.
Well, it sounds like you've, created your profile, who you are, in the Rochester area and kind of become a known person and a person of quality. And so that's commendable. How did you become who you are in Rochester today?
I mean, I just really think that I think a lot of it had to do with my boxing career, but even outside of boxing, I've just always been the person who, you know, I don't retract my hand from anybody. You know, if anybody wants to talk, I'm here. If anybody needs help with something, I'm here. You know, well, more than my younger days when I was more out in the public area, like I sat down and talked with everybody. I've just always been an approachable person. I think that people have, you know, there's not too many people here in Rochester who haven't either had personal interaction with me or had somebody who tells the personal interactions with me, because I've never not wanted to be the person who people say, oh, that guy, he's an a-hole. You know, there's no talking to him. There's no changing his mind about stuff. You know, I've always been that open-minded person to people, and I think that, I've just been real with people my whole life here. I've just been straight up with people, and I think people respect that and see that.
That's cool. I know you've alluded to this before, but if you wanted to say some more about it, wanted to know, how has your experience of Rochester changed in your years living there?
Well, my experiences, I've just for me in this town, I've been able to do nothing but progress in my life since I've been here. I've always, I'm always progressing. There's not many times in my life here that I have regressed in my personal life. Obviously, my boxing career didn't go as I wanted it to go, but outside of that, like I've always been employed. I've always, been able to do things that I enjoy doing here. And like I said at the beginning of this, like, my goal now is just to keep progressing forward, because that's my goal, is just to keep pushing forward while I'm here in Rochester.
I'm hearing like a commitment to Rochester when it sounds like you may have had other opportunities to commit elsewhere. What about Rochester had you commit there?
Well, my commitment to Rochester is solely based off the people here. The people here in Rochester are generally good people. And, obviously the city of Rochester really helped me down during my boxing career. And I feel like through that, I don't want to be the guy who turns his back on the city that held him down, throughout most of his career. And for me, I'm a loyal person, and I feel like if you do right by me, I'm going to do right by you. And Rochester, as far as I'm concerned, has done right by me. And so I don't want to take the good that Rochester has done for me and run with it. Rochester has done good for me, so I want to put good back into Rochester.
I like that. How do you feel that you've improved Rochester by you living there?
This is another thing. I'm not the best at tooting my own horn. But as far as what I can see, like I said, I've opened, those awkward conversations to people who probably wouldn't talk to each other. I am using using what I know as far as my fight career to empower the people of Rochester. That's again what I want to do more of coming, with with this training center I'm trying to get up and running. And I think one thing that I've heard, and I'm paraphrasing, but I've heard, because there was a news article done on me in the stuff that I do here in Rochester, and somebody had told me that them hearing that news article about me gave them hope for people, because with everything that's been going on, people have kind of shied more away from people than they usually would, and I just want to prove that there's still that there are good people in this world. Through all the BS, through all the craziness that's going on, there are good people here. And if I can keep showing other people that there are good people in this world, maybe people's faith in humanity will be restored eventually. I know it's kind of hard with the stuff that's been going on lately, but I feel like good people just need to keep doing good things, and people will get their faith back.
That's good. And how has your life been improved by living in Rochester?
Well, my life has been improved by living in Rochester. I've kind of in the same way. I have done a lot of growing here in this town, and me interacting with some of the people that I interact with helped me. They help me see a different viewpoint on the way that I view things in life. For instance, I was just having a conversation with some other buddies of mine the other day about how, as far as like ownership and stuff like that, had I not moved here to Rochester, I probably would not have had a lot of friends parents who own things, own their homes, own their businesses and stuff like that. And they're creating that generational wealth that people should be pushing towards. And I feel like had I not moved here to this town, that thought process wouldn't be in my head to own things. I'm the first person in my family to own a home because of that. I'm trying to be the first person in my family to own a business that was in the works before COVID hit. And my complete outview on life has shifted dramatically because I moved here to Rochester.
I want to ask you about some current events.
Okay.
But before that, I want to make sure I give you the opportunity to let me know if there's anything that you wanted to make sure people know about your experience in the area.
There is one thing I want to bring up when I was speaking about the school system, stuff like that. When I was talking about the teachers in the school system, I was just kind of referring to the public school system at the time. Because there was a period where I moved back to Minneapolis for a year and I came back to Rochester, and the public school system would not allow me back into the public school system because for some reason they had me pegged as a gang leader because I wore FUBU. And when things arose, as far as the students goes, the students came to me versus going to the teachers. So they had me pegged as a gang leader. So when I came back to Rochester after that year of living back in the cities, I went to a charter school. The charter school that I went to, Rochester off campus, now known as Rosa Parks Charter School, those teachers and the faculty there, they renewed my faith in the school system. They treated me like a person and not just somebody that they are making money off of. Had I not went to that charter school when I came back, I don't think I would have even wanted to graduate from high school, let alone actually graduate from high school. Because again, like, that's another person. Like, I'm the first person in my family to graduate from high school. So I don't want to mix the public school system at the time in with the charter school system, because had it not been for the charter school system that's here, I think that I still wouldn't be the type of person I am now, because the faculty at that school really showed me that my way of thinking, as far as like trying to earn respect versus just giving somebody my respect, was not wrong. Every teacher, every faculty member at that school earned my respect, and they made me want to be there. Because again, it's a charter school. People always look down on charter schools, but that charter school really helped me have an open mind to become the person that I am today. So again, like, I don't want to mix the public school system in at the time with the charter school system. And I don't know, and I don't know if you want to use this or not, but years later, after high school and stuff like that, when I finally became, big in the boxing world, the principal of the school that more or less blackballed me from every school, that more or less blackballed me from every public school here in town, I seen him in public one day, and he asked me to come speak to his students at his school. And I respectfully declined to do so just because of who he was and the way he treated me on the way back. But I went to speak to every other school in town here but his.
How did the folks at the charter school bring that out in you?
Because again, like, they treated me as a person and not just somebody that they get paid whether I come to school or not. I had personal relationships with these teachers. I was able to talk to these teachers as, two people talking versus that God complex that some teachers get. I'm the teacher, so you have to listen to what I say. I've never worked on that frequency. And ironically, I still don't really work on that frequency, but the teachers at the charter school, they, on days where I was more or less testing them to see how they would, to see if they would turn their back on me and stuff like that, they never let me not, they never let me not want to learn. They piqued my interest for learning because they wouldn't let me stop learning. And even to this day, I'm still, I still do, independent research on things because I learned through that school that I do enjoy learning. I enjoy learning about other people, other subjects, stuff that I wouldn't even think to, learn about. I enjoy it because, I don't know, I'm just kind of a nerd. I like random research. I like random knowledge for some reason. And a lot of that, I think, wouldn't have happened had I not went to that charter school.
That's great. I want to circle back to what you said just a little bit earlier.
Okay.
You talked about how students would come to you with problems. Why do you think that was? Or tell me about how that happened.
I honestly don't know how it happened. Again, I think just my personality made me more comfortable to talk to. When, and obviously when kids had, problems with each other, they came to me because they wanted me to be on their side for it. But the teachers in that school, if they knew how many fights more specifically fights that I helped de-escalate, they probably would have begged me to come back to that school. But again, like, because of who I am, and again, like I said, when I first moved to Rochester, I was 6'2", 190 pounds. I was bigger than most of the teachers. so the kids felt protected by me, I guess. That they felt comfortable with me, and they could talk to me. A lot of the teachers back then, anyway, I'm not going to speak for teachers now, but I don't know. But a lot of teachers back then, they were not approachable at all. I hope that changed in the school system now, but back then, well, for the students that I talked to anyway, the teachers were not approachable at all. They had that, just like I said earlier, that God complex that I'm the teacher and you have to listen to what I say. Don't come to me with your problems. Just do your work and go home. Another thing too, when speaking about my younger years as a boxer here in Rochester, I kind of ran into the same issue that I did with the charter school, where my boxing coach, Dan O'Connor, who I still talk to this day, I look at him as a father figure. But he was another person who I tested a lot, and he was another person who he refused to let me fail in life, and I owe that man a great deal of who I am today, because there were times where I would be just screwing off with my friends, stuff like that. He would come find me. He would take his time, hop in his truck at the time, and ride around town looking for me. When he found me, get in the truck, we're going to the gym. That man refused to let me become just another street kid in this town. He saw potential in me, and he felt like he would fail himself if he let me become just another kid who didn't live up to his potential. So again, that man, Dan O'Connor, is another reason why I am the way I am today, because he would not let me fail. He refused to let me fail on my own.
And how did you connect with him?
I met him when I, the first day I went down to boxing with my buddy. And he was another guy who grew up in Rochester. He has his name in Rochester here. He owned a construction company at the time. His brother was, a heavyweight boxer in his time. I think that the way that me and him connected, the way we did, is just like I said, I connected everybody else. I'm approachable and I'm honest with people. And he is a person also who's just honestly, who's honest, sometimes brutally honest with people. And I think that that's how we kind of connect with each other, because we just, there's a saying that I kind of live by a bunch. It said that everybody needs an a-hole in their life, and if you don't have an a-hole, I will be that a-hole for you. and Dan was that a-hole for me, and I tend to be that a-hole for a lot of other people. I'm not doing it out of malice. I do it because I care.
That sounds like a definite asset to the community. So I wanted to ask about recent events and kind of get understand your response and your experience.
Okay.
What has been your experience of the current health pandemic?
Oh man, it's been tragic. I personally know people who have gotten it. I've been thankful to not know anybody that died from it. But I've known people that lost their businesses because of it. And it has terrified people. um, it saddens me that this pandemic has terrorized a certain amount of people, and I just hope that we can, once all this thing kind of goes over and this vaccine that people want is getting rolled out, we can kind of get back to normality. I hope that it won't take people long to come back from this because I don't think people really understand the repercussions of what's going on. Like this, I feel like this is going to fundamentally change how we interact with each other. And that's kind of the sad thing for me because like we talked about this whole conversation, like my whole thing is people need to interact more. And I think that with people being afraid to be around each other because of this whole COVID thing, it's going to hinder a lot of progress that people can make towards each other. That being said, it gives me some hope that a certain fraction of this country actually does come together and does look out for each other and really want to help end this thing. And those are the people that I'm focused on. The people who want to do right by other people, regardless of how it affects them selfishly. For all the people out there that have lost their business through this, I hate it. But hopefully this is a learning experience. I have definitely learned something through this by somebody who's aspiring to be a business owner. I've learned something through this. And I hope everybody that has lost things in this whole thing can bounce back somehow. I'm not sure how that looks, but I hope people come back from this stronger.
And what have you learned about business ownership through a pandemic that you're taking away from it?
The main thing that I've learned, especially for me talking specifically for the business that I'm wanting to learn, is have online options. Have options that people can take home, and just have contingencies for if something like this does end up happening again. A lot of businesses that I know that are shutting down cannot or didn't have the apparatus to do distance programs or have people learn outside of their facility. And that is something that when I do become a business owner, that I'm going to have that set to the side just in case. I think a lot of people never thought that this type of thing could happen, so they weren't prepared for it, and that's why a lot of businesses are going down. I'm definitely not faulting people for losing their businesses, but again, I'm using this as a learning experience for myself to make sure that to prepare for things like this to happen again, because we've seen that, and this is not a rag on the government, but the government was not prepared for the thing to happen the way it did, and a lot of people are losing their businesses because of it. And when I do become a business owner, I don't want to be one of those people.
Yeah. Thank you. And what has been your experience of the renewed calls for racial justice?
Oh man, for me, this is something that should be called a renewed one. This is something that should be, something that's continuously going on until some very significant change happens. I'm glad that more people are speaking out about this. More specifically, I'm glad that people who don't necessarily deal with the racial injustice are speaking out against it. I think that's a great help to the cause. I feel like the more people that we get on our side, the better chance we have of making some real change to it. And this is just my personal opinion, and my girlfriend actually told me not to even bring this up, and I'm going to anyway. I think that all of that falls by the wayside until we get rid of private prisons, because, you know, when you're making money off people's bodies, people, we aren't going to have true racial justice until we get rid of people profiting off of it. And I feel that once that apparatus is shut down completely, then we can start talking about real change. But until then, we're we're casting small nets in the big ocean at that point. But we got to get rid of the apparatuses that people are profiting off of bodies, and we have to get rid of the apparatus that people are profiting off of bodies.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Butler, I appreciate your time. That's all the questions I have for you, but if there's more that you wanted to share, please let me know.
Nothing really, except for, I mean, this is kind of the, the general thing about my whole conversation is, people just need to open their minds and take care of each other, regardless of, the communities they grew up in, the heritage, and the people just need to start taking care of each other. And I know I sound like the most uber liberal person in the world, but I honestly do feel that if people start taking the time to interact with one another, and we realize that we have more in common than we have differences, I think that a lot of the things that are going on now, when people just, I honestly think that, like I said, when people come together and actually have conversations, have uncomfortable conversations, more specifically uncomfortable conversations, I think the more we learn about each other, the more we can come together and actually battle the problems that we have. People have made it to this point in history. I feel like we can not only take care of yourself, take care of each other, and people just need to come together. What my main point is in all that.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.